Hello, good evening to all of you. Welcome to the seventh webinar organized by Pallavan Learning Systems, or PLS as most of you refer to us as. Before we start this webinar, I would like to say a few words about our organization and the work that we do. We are primarily an educational research organization, and our focus is mainly on the concept of learning how to learn. We believe in promoting learning in all its various facets and its diverse forms. Currently, we are doing a lot of work on the 5 areas of development, and we are also doing work on inculcating skills, processes, and watermarks as an integral part of the learning process. Well, at PLS, one of the main objectives we have is to conduct research and organize seminars and conferences, such as this webinar. And we do this primarily for the creation and dissemination of new knowledge, so that what we do at PLS is current and relevant to the rapidly changing times. In the past, we have organized quite a number of webinars. If you go to our website, as well as the documentation that we can share, we have worked on topical issues. Some of the issues that we have conducted webinars on include nurturing our learners in the time of COVID-19. We have dealt with the future of learning. We have looked at developing a sustainable community approach to promote learning. And we have also touched upon mental well-being, discussing it both from the perspective of science as well as Buddhist philosophy. If you are interested in any of these webinar topics, please do reach out to us, and we would be more than delighted to share the detailed reports on them. Now coming to this present webinar, I have to say this is a very special webinar for us. First, the theme, ways of learning, is something that we primarily work on a daily basis. So it's something very near and dear to our hearts. But maybe more importantly, this webinar is special because it is solely conducted by students. All the speakers that we have on our panel today, including the moderators, as well as those asking questions, they are all our young learners. They are high school students from grade 9 to 12 from various parts of the world. And I, for one, can say that I cannot wait to learn from them. As audience, I urge you to please listen in and actively participate by typing your questions and discussions on our Zoom platform. Please do select all participants and attendees on the checkbox so that everyone can view your comments and questions. You can alternately use our Facebook platform for discussion and questions as well. Finally, our panelists will try to respond to all your questions and inquiries during the Q&A session. Without further delay, I would like to invite our two young moderators, Nendra Namgil Wangchuk and Kabir Velayan Subia, to take over the session and start this webinar on the topic, ways of learning.
Thank you, Joki sir. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on ways of learning. Recently, we've seen major trends within education, and this webinar is going to discuss some of those trends. We've seen how there's been shift in focus from content to skills, and students from various schools across the country and across other countries are going to talk about their experiences with this. From a boarding school context, as I'm from the Doon school, COVID-19 had a major impact on my education. It meant that I had to start taking ownership of my own academics more than ever before, because my teachers were no longer able to hold me accountable as they were when I was in school. This is what we're going to be talking about in our second theme today. In our third theme, we're going to be talking about learning in the digital era. We're going to be talking about online classes and the benefits that they have, as well as the challenges that come with an online setting and digital education. Personally, I derived a lot of benefit from online classes because I was able to participate in debates and other conferences that I wouldn't have been able to if they weren't online, because they were international conferences that would have otherwise happened physically. However, the online classes also had its challenges in the number of distractions that prevented me sometimes from learning and focusing on the class itself. So today, without further ado, I would like to call on my co-moderator, Nendra Wangchuk, who is going to introduce the structure of this webinar, following which we will move on to discussing the themes. Very happy to have you here, and Nendra, I would invite you to speak.
Thank you very much, Kabir. So first of all, to introduce myself, my name is Nendra Namgal Wangchuk, and I am currently studying in the 12th grade at the Royal Academy in Bhutan. So as Kabir already mentioned, I'll be going over the format of this webinar. So we have 3 themes for this webinar. The first theme that we have is learning how to learn. The second theme that we have is changing roles of self, teachers, and parents or family members. The third theme that we have is defining learning in the digital era. So for each of these themes, there will be 3 speakers each, and there will be a few questions at the end of each theme. Each theme should take approximately 15 minutes. So all 3 themes should take approximately 45 minutes to cover. And once all the speakers have spoken about the 3 themes, we will have a question and answer session, which is also for 15 minutes. And then the conclusion and the thank you note. So we should approximately finish the webinar at 7:10 Bhutan time. So without further ado, I would like to start the first theme by calling upon Sanwarya Nagar. So please introduce yourself and start off the discussion.
Good evening, everyone, one and all present here. I am Sanwarya Nagar of grade 11 in Pallavan school, Jhalawar. Jhalawar is located in the state of Rajasthan in India. Today, I am going to speak on the topic learning how to learn. This topic holds a special significance for me as the student of Pallavan school, as the philosophy of our school is based on learning or learning to learn, or aao seekhna seekhein in Hindi, where the emphasis is on the process of learning rather than just on the content of learning. I joined the Pallavan school in the year 2011 when I was in class 2nd. Before joining Pallavan, I was in a government school in my village, which is 30 kilometers apart from Jhalawar. Pallavan school was set up with the philosophy to provide better education in the rural ambience of Jhalawar, which is a small town even today. The difference I observed between my previous school and the Pallavan is the way of learning, where the focus is on the process of learning, while the previous school was on the rote learning system. Coming to the topic, first of all, we should understand the meaning of the phrase learning how to learn. This may have 3 distinct meanings. How to become a better learner. How to become a better learner. Second one is how to conduct inquiry and construct knowledge in certain disciplines and fields. And the third is then how to become a self-directed learner. Now, as we know that the content is becoming obsolete at rapid pace, therefore, if we can identify how we can learn and why we are learning, we will be at the much better position to assimilate the new knowledge in constantly changing environment, and we will be able to use the knowledge appropriately, and at different places we can use our knowledge. As we know that the teachers, gurus, and there are many technologies and books are the good resources for getting knowledge, and we can learn very much from that, but we should be able to learn from ourselves by looking within. We need to make our own experience the basis of learning so that we are constantly on the learning mode. In the olden times, there were gurukuls, where a single teacher, that is guru, taught the sishyas about the different vidyas, but those gurukuls have been transformed into schools, and these are specialized for each and every discipline. There are different teachers and specialized teachers for each and every subject or discipline. Let us understand the importance of learning to learn by taking an example. Give a man a fish. You can feed him for only a day, but if you If you teach a man, if you teach that man how to fish, then you will feed him for a lifetime. This is the message that I want to convey to you, that this saying emphasizes that the teacher should make the learner a self-learner instead of a rote learner, making a self-understandable learner. As learning is a lifelong and unending process till the death, we should understand the real process of learning. We should understand what is the real meaning of learning. So at every phase of life, we can learn, we can understand new things. So at last, I want to say that our focus is on the learning process, not on the rote learning. Thank you everyone.
Thank you very much, Sawarya. So as Sawarya mentioned, we have to learn how to learn in this dynamically changing environment before whatever we learn becomes obsolete, and therefore we should be great learners, passionate ones. So next, I would like to call Anushree Chakraborty to share on learning how to learn.
Thank you, Nendra. Good evening to everyone present here. I am Anushree Chakraborty, a 9th grader from S.F.X Greenherald International School of Dhaka, Bangladesh, and today I am delighted to be speaking about my learning how to learn venture. Learning starts from birth. Until we die, we may not have learned everything. The word learning and its methods are debatable topics. However, it is more concerning to learn learning, that is to realize how to make learning easy, efficient, and desirable. Personally, a more hands-on practical education seems to be a better option for me because we get to learn not only the theory, but also how to apply it in our real life and how it is in the world around us. In my school, our teachers have always seen to the need that we can relate our studies to real life, from giving real-life examples to making arrangements so that we can see bookish knowledge in our real life. Our teachers have done all possible. Even in art class in pre-lockdown situations, we would venture out in the fields of our schools and learn about curiosity and observation. Another interesting method our school has applied is that in the campus, there is a huge three-dimensional map of Bangladesh, situated in a place where it attracts maximum attention. Without us noticing, our daily viewing of that map made us memorize important locations of Bangladesh very easily, which greatly helped us in our history subject. Furthermore, science experiments and computer labs made the subject more interesting, as did various environment, science and language clubs closely supervised and guided by our teachers. So it is evident that our schools play a huge role in influencing how we learn. While practical experiences make learning more easy and interesting, tackling content-based learning for exams is also an issue and is the role of a student himself or herself. Finding the courage.
Could you just speak slightly slower so that our audience can hear you properly? Thank you.
Thank you. Finding the correct learning method for content-based learning proved to be difficult because it took a long time to realize what was the best one for me. However, here are some things I learned through trial and error. Preparing for any test is a stressful matter. So proper sleep, proper meals, exercise, etc. are extremely necessary. To learn anything quickly, to prefer to reading it aloud and writing it down, diagrams and mnemonics are useful at ease. In addition to that, apps or videos on the internet with colorful graphics and beautiful diagrams go a long way and make us understand the topic better. But as I said, moving away from content-based learning processes and focusing more on practical or indirect methods make the learning options best for me and for many others I have seen. This lockdown has made a very good experience for us because it made practical learning more possible. It gave us time to fulfill those tasks which we couldn't do because of a time limit before. This lockdown has proved to us that we can move away from theory and learn more through experiences in our real life. Like in my case, I learned how to bake and I related it with what I learned in biology classes, making it more fun and understandable. Now in 9th grade, after almost 10 years of being a student, I have finally developed my own studying methods, but I still continue learning how to learn since learning needs and environment continue to change. In this aspect, my parents play a huge role in supporting me and helping me whenever I need it. Thus, learning how to learn is not a self journey. It is a joint venture involving school, teachers, parents, and the student himself or herself. It is a journey requiring patience, skills, and perseverance, since learning, in all its senses, keeps changing as the earth keeps evolving. At least that's what I have learned. Thank you everyone for listening to me. I hope my speech was useful to some people present today.
Thank you very much, Anushree. So as Anushree mentioned, so we have to relate our studies to real life, because if what we study is not practical, then what is the use of studying? And as Anushri mentioned, we learn a lot from practical experiences instead of just learning theory and content. So next, I would like to call Barami Punyabuka to talk about learning how to learn.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Barami Punyabukana. I'm currently studying in grade 10 at Panyaprateep School in Thailand, and I'm here to talk about the phrase learning how to learn. I'd actually like to begin with something that happened to me recently. I was very nervous about speaking here at this webinar. I was shaking and crying. Well, not really crying, but I was very nervous. So I thought to myself, how do I get rid of my nerves? And that's where the Four Noble Truths come in. First of all, my school is not focused on the only more academic side of learning, but they also focus on teaching us life skills, which are the fundamentals for every stage of learning. And the Four Noble Truths are some of them. So what are the Four Noble Truths, you may ask? The Four Noble Truths are a Buddhist teaching that help you solve problems in a creative and innovative way, or a more religious term for design thinking. It consists of 4 steps. The first is to identify the pain point, or in Thai we call it tuk. For example, the problem for me is that I'm very nervous every time I have to speak publicly, or in this case, speaking in front of a big virtual crowd, which leads to the second step, samutai, or finding what causes the problem, or the Voldemort to your Harry Potter, if that metaphor makes sense. In my case, it's my lack of self-confidence and a good script. After worrying about all of this, you might want to bail or drop out because the problem is too big or too hard to solve. That's when the third step comes in, nirod, or what's the vision of your success? What would it look like if this problem didn't exist? This really helps you to get your hopes up when you don't really have a clue of what's going on. In my case, it's a flawless delivery of a speech that could hopefully change somebody's way of thinking. Once you're up and running again, it's time to execute the last step of your plan, which is mak, or questioning how to reach the vision. How would you achieve this goal? How would you bring this idea to life? For me, it's repetition. Practicing a lot with my friends and teachers helped me get rid of my fear of public speaking and boosted my self-confidence. These 4 steps can be applied to anything in your life, from problems about studying to just life in general. Lastly, I think being familiar with this way of thinking makes it faster for you to adapt to new ways of learning, and being able to solve problems make it easier for you to study on different platforms, because no matter what medium you're studying on, you'll still be able to manage yourself and not panic when a problem occurs. That's why for me, shifting focus from the content that you're studying to how you're studying it, or learning how to learn, is a very crucial aspect of studying in today's climate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barami. I think that Barami has shared a very crucial fundamental life skill which we can use. And he mentioned we can find a point of conflict, we can search for the cause of that conflict, and then look for a vision for success, and question how we can achieve that success. And I think that this is very practical knowledge that Barami has given us. Now we will head for the question and answer for this theme. So I would like to ask Manan Ahuja to ask the first question.
Thank you. So my name is Manan Ahuja, and I am from the Vasant Valley School, that's in New Delhi, India, and I'm currently in grade 11. So my question to the speakers would be that even though new and alternative forms of learning are a very important goal, they seem far off. I would like to find out about some innovative solutions that are sustainable as well as practical in implementing new methods of learning currently. What do you think could be such solutions?
May I answer this question?
Sure.
If I suggest such solutions, because there is, as I said, it's a joint venture. It is the role of parents, teachers, and students, and everyone, even friends around us in this journey to learn how to learn. So I think personally for me, the solution test that moving away from content-based to a more for mass, as you said, for mass schools, it's not possible for moving so traditionally right now to content-based to such like that. For example, you can go to field trips. We can go to field trips to manufacturing places, to field trips to historical places where we can learn about the stuff we have seen in the book. We can actually we can go to shopping with our parents, we can learn about stuff. So the thing is that we have to learn through experiences we're experiencing in our daily life, because when you go to shopping, we actually do the maths from the, for example, the prices of the products, or we're seeing what is happening around us. So that is what I think should be the, one of the answers to your questions.
Thank you, Anushri, for answering that question. So now may I ask Somtsering to ask the second question?
Thank you. Good evening to all. And before I ask my questions, I would like to do a little bit about myself. My name is Namtsring. I'm in class 12, and I'm from Tibetan Children's Village School, Selakui, in India. And my question is that the second speaker has emphasized on the importance of balanced learning. So my question is how to become a balanced learner, and what is its importance? Thank you.
May I answer this question? So I think being a balanced learner is based on not pushing yourself too hard to study. If you like study till 3 a.m. every day before your exam, you will end up not being able to do good in the exam because you lack sleep or your brain is not working very well. But I think managing your time into sections and completing your task according to your own time while not pushing yourself too hard is a perfect way of balanced learning.
Thank you very much, Barami. So next, may I ask Kinzang to ask the last question? But since we have to be on schedule, keep it as concise as possible.
Hi everyone, my name is Kinzang and I'm currently studying in grade 11 in Wangbama Central School, Thimphu, Bhutan. If I ask the question, people argue that aging affects learning process, but research proves this to be incorrect. What could be the contributing factors?
Will you please repeat the question?
People argue that aging affects learning processes, but research proves this to be incorrect. What could be the contributing factors?
Well, Kingsung, I believe that age does not determine what a person can learn, because when a person sees a person can learn at any age, because when a person has the interest to learn or the urge and the curiosity to learn, I don't think age can act as a barrier in there. Because when you see everything around you, we can actually see this example in many places around us. There are now increasing number of elderly learning from television shows, or increasing number of elderlies in colleges and universities going for further studies that may have not been available in their time, because they have now the opportunities. Actually, as time evolves, there are more opportunities. So age does not determine how people actually face the upcoming evolving learning aids. So that is, I think, age does not determine that.
Thank you.
Will I give the answer? Will I put forward my view?
Yes.
You can.
Sure.
A great mindset that learn even how to die. We can learn from everything at every age. So learning is not affected by the age. And that learn how to die is by Muhammad Prophet. The urge of learning is what is important, not the learning is affected by the age. You can learn at every age.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sawaria. So now I would like Kabir to take over for the second theme.
Thank you so much, Nanda. That was a very productive discussion. Our second theme for today is about the changing roles of self, as in the student or the learner, and teachers and parents, as well as extended family. I know that for me, 2020 marked me taking much greater ownership of my own academics, and my parents keeping a much greater check on what I was studying and when I was studying. And for my teachers, who I was originally very, very close to, having to take a step back and being strictly confined to the classroom and teaching me. And so with this theme, I would invite our three speakers, Samrid, Ranjal, and Chetan, to speak about their experiences with changing roles. Our first speaker is Samrid. Samrid, I would ask you to introduce yourself and then go on and speak. Thank you.
Sure. So, good morning to one and all present here. My name is Samrid Baheti. I am from Mayo College, grade 11, which is a school in Rajasthan, Ajmer. So, I would start by saying a quote by the great Chinese author Sun Tzu. The quote is, "In midst of chaos, there is also opportunity." So by chaos, I'm referring to the COVID-19 pandemic, and by opportunity, I am referring to one's own being of exploring themselves and their surroundings. You see, in life, we all have experienced changing roles at some point or the other, be it a leadership opportunity in school or even organizing your own room. Now, I am going to share my views on the topic changing roles of oneself, one teachers, and one's family members due to the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown. Firstly, due to the lockdown posed by the coronavirus, we were restricted to our homes. As a result, most of us tended to explore more about ourselves, which made us see a more clear picture of who we really are and our goals and our ambitions. Our goals in life became clearer and we became more mature so as to achieve our goals. So one's roles to oneself has become relatively more mature than before. Secondly, due to the lockdown posed by the coronavirus, students were unable to attend schools physically. Most of the schools arranged for the students an online platform for education. So soon, the teachers realized that they started to miss the physical class and as well as their students, as the online platform was nowhere near a physical experience of a classroom. And also in some cases, the schools could not even arrange for the students an online platform. So for some students, they were completely cut off from their teachers for almost a year. So this led to a deeper bond between the students and teachers. So the role of the teachers changed from just a teacher who was only concerned with the marks and the percentages of a student to being a mentor who is also concerned about their personal lives. Now, thirdly, family and the parents. So as we all were restricted in our homes for a very long time, we were able to spend more time with our family or in some cases only with our parents. But this quality time which we spend with our family members and loved ones made us know each other better. So the bond went way deeper than it was before. And the role in which the families and parents were in for any single citizen, it changed from just acquaintances to a close friends. So, and lastly, I would like to requote my quote from which I started the speech, and that is, "In midst of chaos, there is also opportunity." So by keeping this in mind, I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samrid, for that enlightening speech. I think the idea of being able to explore ourselves as well as our relationships with our family members is especially interesting, and is something that all of us were able to do, hopefully, in this period. So thank you so much for that speech. I would now like to invite Ranjal Mishra to introduce himself and give his speech. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Ranjal Mishra. I'm entering grade 12 in Sanskriti school, New Delhi in India. I'll talk about the changing roles of various stakeholders in any student's education in these new ways of learning that we've all had to adjust to. I'll speak briefly about four major themes which I feel are the most relevant and that I personally have experienced as being very important shifts in the past 1 year. So, the first major theme I'd like to talk about is the opportunity for better learning created by the online setup. So, for example, about asking doubts, I've noticed that a lot of students who were earlier in physical classes were more conscious about asking doubts because their friends were all around them, have become a little more comfortable in just unmuting themselves and asking questions because more often than not, people's cameras are off and they don't have to look at the other people's faces. Therefore, asking doubts has become much more comfortable for many students, including myself. The second major benefit of the online setup is the computer-based system, computer-based teaching, which is why we can visualize concepts better. For example, in mathematics this year, our teacher actually showed us real-time graphic representations of various trigonometric functions. So taken together, the online setup has helped to deepen learning, complete one's learning, and to complete one's understanding of concepts that they have learned in school. The second major theme is what I feel is the changing role of a student in learning, which I feel has been spoken about earlier as well. But just to reiterate that the student now is much more responsible for their own learning. A teacher can't see if you've not understood a concept because that your cameras more often than not have been off. Therefore, the student, unless the student goes to the teacher and actually has the initiative to ask their doubts to the teacher won't know. Therefore, a person has to be much more proactive in improving their own learning and therefore has to be a lot more self-aware. The third major theme is the changing role of parents, which again has been spoken about to some extent. Because a lot of parents have been at home, or at least have spent more time at home during this period, they've had the opportunity to talk to their children more about their studies, about how their education is going. And I feel there has been a shift from school being more of an isolated interaction between the student and the institution to being a partnership between the parents and the students and the institutions. And I feel this shift is very important because it brings the new element of parents and family members into the learning equation more than they had been earlier. The final major theme is the other major challenges which have been posed, and I'll talk about just the two major ones that I felt is very important. The first is that obviously teachers are not able to see their students. So they don't know how much the student is understanding unless the student is forthcoming. It is easy to bunk in the name of connection issues, bunking classes, and it's easier to cheat in online exams. So this is one very major challenge for the teachers themselves. Second major, and I feel the most lasting challenge and something that can have the most lasting impression on the students is loneliness. So what I've noticed is that groups that existed before this new system came about have become a lot more concentrated. Friend groups have become more concentrated. Interaction with new kids has reduced because it is so difficult to interact with new people in the online or through the online medium. Therefore, people who either did not have a very strong group of friends or just could not adjust to, calling on a daily basis or video calling friends who could not adjust to that system, they tend to feel a little left out. And I know people who felt very lonely during this period and have had to go through very challenging situations. So, in conclusion, I'd just like to say that I hope the major challenges that I've spoken about do resolve themselves as more and more students go back to school, as the process has been started in many places. And the opportunities that have been created, the new habits and the new systems that we have discovered to learn better, they stick around, they stay with us so that learning in the future is as holistic, if not more than it has become.
Thank you so
That
much.
I like.
Thank you, Ranjal. So what I got from Pranjal's speech was that students have to be more proactive, which I thought was a very interesting idea. But also how when cameras are off, it's much easier to ask doubts, which is something I had never thought of when I was in my online classes. So thank you for that, Pranjal. And I would now like to invite Chetan. Chetan, please introduce yourself and then go ahead with your speech. Thanks.
Thank you, Kabir. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change, Albert Einstein. Good evening to all the participants in today's panel discussion. My name is Chetanji Vadvani, and I'm a student of grade 11 in Shiv School, Noida, in India. And today I shall be sharing my views on the changing roles of self, teachers, and parents. Due to the influence of COVID-19, the educational sector, like any other, has taken time to settle into the new normal. Many methodologies regarding studies have been reconsidered and reconstructed so as to create a more effective virtual environment. Consequently, the role of students, teachers, and parents have also evolved. Add to this the constant woes of unreliable web services which made virtual classrooms many times impossible. For students, it has undoubtedly been restrictive. The essence of learning in a physical environment where students can appreciate social activities, sports, etc., has been entirely replaced by isolated monitor screens. But while COVID has taken a bite in our social life, it has created a space for our students to grow bite by bite. Firstly, e-learning, virtual classrooms, webinars, etc. are the hallmarks of new age learning. It is time that we pull up our socks and unleash our tech-savvy side. Secondly, the students also have to hone up their communication skills with their teachers and peers so as to not lag behind in the virtual environment. Finally, the onus of responsibility has shifted from parents and teachers to the students. It is no more about reaching the school on time or forcibly attending classes. It is rather up to us whether we attend classes or merely log in our presence and carry on sleeping, watching Netflix, or chatting with our friends. Moving on to the teachers, I believe their domain as well has taken quite a quantum leap. Firstly, in the virtual space, the teacher has to maintain dual roles, that of an educator and that of an educatee. This is because online teaching is new and requires a different approach of guiding students. Hence, he or she has to constantly upskill themselves to fit into the virtual methodology. Second, in the virtual environment, a teacher's capability of being a motivator is really tested. This is because students studying online find it hard and a lot of times discouraging, and without the correct dose of motivation and encouragement, they tend to bunk classes. Hence, I believe a lot of effort within and beyond the classroom is put by teachers to individually communicate and encourage each learner. Lastly, online assessment and identification of strengths and weaknesses of students, you can only gauge in 2 dimensions so as to provide parents with an actual feedback on their board's educational journey is also not easy. Now let us talk about parents that form the third part of this triangle, and our discussion shall not be complete without referring to them. Firstly, they have to participate more actively in their child's daily schedule to ensure a healthy timetable where the ward is prioritizing his or her education without wasting time on social media all day. Simultaneously, they also have to put in effort to encourage a holistic development of their child, extracurricular-wise, within the confines of their respective homes. Second, the parents have to ensure availability of space for maintaining personal boundaries. And lastly, parents also need to make sure that they are in constant contact with teachers to get constant feedbacks regarding their ward's participation and performance in classes. So in conclusion, I would like to conclude my talk by saying that life is dynamic and the only thing constant in life is change, and how well we adapt to it, it depends upon us. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech, Chetan. I thought the quote of your measure to change and your ability to change and overcome virtual hurdles was very interesting, as well as the role of teachers and parents in motivating and encouraging students. So thank you for telling us about this. And that concludes the speeches for theme 2. So we'll take questions now. So Manan, if we'll take Manan first, we'll take your question.
Thank you, Kabir. So my question is that we have talked about several people who have roles traditionally in education, like the parents, the teachers, and the students. With this new system of education coming up, new learning styles, who do you think is experiencing the maximum amount of change in their traditional roles?
Do you mind if I go first?
Go ahead.
I'll start. I believe you really can't put a number on it. You really can't justify because for a student attending school physically, playing sports, participating in social activities, that was really important. And this change has been huge for them. And for parents, while previously their role was quite restricted to just checking on their child probably once in a while, they now have to fully participate in each and every activity that they are involved in every day, and hence their role has also changed. And as for the teachers as well, the new methodologies that they have to come up with to teach effectively online, they're not easy. So you can't really just say that one has had one has had to go through more change than the other.
Thank you for that answer, Chetan. We have a question from the audience that we'd like to ask. So it's directed to Pranjal. So Pranjal, you made a very good observation when you said that the introvert learner has benefited from online classes. The question is that research on online teaching or virtual teaching says that online teaching deprives learners of the human touch that can affect how effective online classes are. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I do agree that there is a human touch aspect which is missing. But what I also feel is what's most important in any learning environment is whether you get your doubts clarified. And I feel that if somebody feels more, I feel that in an online setup, people feel more comfortable in asking their doubts and questions. So learning, at least for me as well, has been more complete in this environment. And also, if one does miss that human touch, there are many platforms like Khan Academy and other such places where that aspect can be catered to. So while I do agree with that, I also feel that there are ways to get over it.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Now we will move on to the next theme. And so I would like Nandra to introduce the theme and then invite the speakers.
Now we'll be going into the third section, which is defining learning in the digital era. So as the first speaker, I would like to ask Kile Wangmo to start speaking.
Thank you, Nandra. Hello, everyone. I'm Kile Wangmo from Dechencholing Higher Secondary School, which is located in Thimphu, Bhutan. I'm a grade 11 student, and I'm very happy to be part of this webinar. And today I'll be speaking on learning in the digital era and some of the experiences and challenges that I have encountered while adopting digital learning platforms. So with the unfolding of COVID-19 crisis, COVID-19 crisis, it has resulted in schools to shut all across the world. So even though we had to stay at our home, our learning had never stopped, as we all live in information age or digital age, where we can connect with each other very easily and informations are freely and readily available. So due to the COVID-19, we had our education has changed drastically with giving rise to e-learning. Whereby teaching is taken on the digital platforms. So before the outbreak of this disease, we used to follow our traditional methods of teaching and learning, whereby our teacher used to lecture us and we used to jot down the points, and we hardly used any technology for our learning to enhance our learning. So as a day scholar, it was very difficult for me to carry whole textbook and notebook from home to school, then back to home. So we used to leave our textbook and notebook in the classroom. So I feel that that's one of the reasons which is affecting our learning. Then with the unfolding of COVID-19 crisis, we had no other option but to adopt digital learning platforms. So some of the challenges that I've encountered while adopting digital learning platform was that it was very difficult for me to connect submit our assignments and attend online classes, because this way of learning was very new to me, and I had a tough time operating different apps because different teachers, subject teachers uses different apps such as Google Classroom, Google Meet, Zoom, and etc. So it was very difficult for me to operate these different apps. And while taking online classes, I had a tough time finding a suitable place at home, and there were a lot of distractions because learning environment at home was not as friendly as in the school. And moreover, I feel that the online learning tends to focus more on theory than practical. So I feel that for learning to take place, both theory and practical should go together. And the major problem was internet connection. So while taking online classes, we used to lose connection in the middle of the classes because internet connection was not stable and fast. And some of the students didn't even had an access to internet. So unfortunately, they had to skip their online classes. So these are the challenges or drawbacks of online classes. So apart from this, after using different apps for several times, I got used to it, and I find it a very beneficial and also a convenient way of learning because we can easily reach out for teachers' help, and learning is no longer restricted within the walls of classroom because we can learn anywhere and everywhere, and we can learn on our own pace as we don't have to wait for our friends to understand that particular topic. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kile. So as Kile said, learning never stops. And in this era, we have so many connections. And due to the COVID pandemic, e-learning has really boomed. We no longer have heavy bags to carry, and I agree with that. So next, I would like to call Chris to talk about defining learning in the digital era.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Paul. I study in Delhi private school, Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. So I'm talking about the digital learning in the digital era. So firstly, I would like to talk about my experience with digital learning. And at first, I was very bad at it. I couldn't really understand in classes. The classes were fast paced. And then procrastination was easier during online learning because you had so many distractions during online learning, because in a normal classroom environment which is controlled, you have one thing to do, which is solely focus on your work. And now when you're at your home, you have several distractions which affected my state of learning. Another thing was but the one positive I saw was how I did my assignments, since it was very easy and flexible on how to do the assignments online, and I could type my assignments. But another problem which I really faced was, since I couldn't collect my textbooks, I had to learn through PDFs, which was very inconvenient since I love learning from books. So that's another problem I learned. But eventually I overcame my uncomfortableness with online learning, and I came with peace at it. So one important lesson that I learned from online learning is that sometimes there will be challenges in life, and you can't get away from it, and you need to adjust to the new norm, which was online learning this year. So that really helped me a lot with the help of my teachers. And now I'm going to speak about what do I think is the future of learning. I think the future of learning now is the hybrid model, in which you can have the best of both worlds, the convenience of online learning and the social interactions you can have with your teachers in physical classes. So I think hybrid learning is the future, and there's several research which has been conducted. For example, the US Department of Education says that hybrid learning is one of the most effective ways of learning. So that's what I think is the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. As Chris mentioned, he shared his experience about procrastination in the new norm of e-learning. And I feel like it's an issue that we have, and it's a challenge that we have faced. And the joining of both worlds, the convenience of online learning and the real life interactions in classrooms, the hybrid learning can lead to a much better learning process. So next, I would like to call Keshav Dudhani to speak about the learning in the digital era.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keshav Dudhani from the Scindia School, Gwalior, India, and I'm currently studying in class 11, pursuing science. It's indeed a pleasure to be part of such an esteemed panel and to be interacting with all of you today. So the previous panelists have already spoken about the different ways of learning, the changing roles of the student, their attitude shift. And without any further ado, I'd like to begin and put forth my thoughts. So I'm back at my campus and I'm currently attending my physical classes. So when I was informed that I'll be speaking on learning in the digital era, I started to compare my physical classes to my online classes. And while I was putting my thoughts together, I realized that so much has changed around us. In the past 50 years or so, there have been so many drastic changes. And it's fascinating to see that how we travel, how we communicate, how we entertain ourselves has changed so much. But on the contrary, a classroom has largely remained the same. And I'm primarily talking about India. But now this gap is being filled by technology. Education in the 21st century cannot be devoid of technology. This change was inevitable. It had to come. And the pandemic played the role of a catalyst to increase the rate of this change. So in a class, there are different types of learners. Like I involve myself and learn, and the friend who sits beside me writes and learns. So in our online classes, the first 10 to 15 minutes, the teacher introduced us to our topics through lecture method. But the next 20 to 30 minutes were consisted of different types of activities, like we discussed question and answers, we wrote them, or we watched a video on that particular topic. And with that, we also had quizzes. So digital learning has helped the teacher to cater to the needs of all the students. And both the teachers and the students are adapting to the new and innovative ways of learning. And its live testimony is this webinar today. As students, I hope you all are familiar with the line that says that a teacher has come to teach. And have you ever heard a teacher has come for us to learn? That shows a mind frame. At least I haven't. But digital learning is now changing this persona. Focus is now being shifted from teaching to learning. As Chetan and Pranjal rightly said, the onus or the responsibility is now being shifted to the learner, to the student. And this is making the student self-dependent, self-governed. However, we cannot have a lopsided approach towards digital learning. The biggest limitation to digital learning is face-to-face interaction, and there are many more cons to it. But anyways, digital learning is the way forward. It's the future, and we have to embrace it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keshav. As Keshav has already mentioned, that learning can no longer be devoid of technology, and the pandemic was a catalyst for this change. And that digital learning is the future of learning. So now I would like to ask Sonam Tsering to ask his question.
Thank you. According to this topic, my question is, we all face different kind of difficulties during our digital learning. So my question is how to stay motivated and stay positive in this kind of chaotic situation. That's my question. Thank you.
Can I go first?
Sure, okay, Shiv.
In order to stay motivated during an online class, we have to take the responsibility on ourselves because there's no teacher spoon feeding us, and there are our parents who are looking after us. But despite that, we need to take the responsibility of ourselves. We need to be self-governed, and that's one of many motivations during an online class to stay focused. If you look at the bigger picture, during a physical class, the teacher reminds us in every few minutes that we have to do this, we have to do that. But in an online class, it's our voluntary act to do it for our own good. Thank
you. Thank you very much, Keshav. Now I would like to ask Kinzang Dendup to ask his question. It seems that Kinzang is unable to ask his question right now. So can we move into the question and answers, Kabir?
Sure. So now we move on to our question and answer session. So I think there is an issue with the Kinzang's internet connection. So, okay, so we move on to the question and answer session. So we have a few audience questions as well as a few questions from the panelists itself, if time permits. So our first question is from Ranjan Dorji, and it's directed to Kinley Wangmo. So Kinley, based on your experience of e-learning or digital learning over the COVID-19 pandemic period, what advice would you give to your teachers or to teachers in general to make online teaching a better experience and more effective and interactive and engaging?
Thank you for the question. Since online learning is new to most of us, even to the teachers, we have faced a lot of challenges. So as a student, while we are taking online classes, since it is very new to us, our teachers, we used to put off our video and speaker. Then we don't listen. Actually, we don't actually listen to them, as we will be in our own world. So I think the best way is to make it compulsory to put on the video so that every students pays attention to the teachers. So I think that's the best way.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I think it's something that a lot of students probably dread, but is maybe the best approach on behalf of teachers. So thank you for that answer.
So now we have a question for Kabir Subia. So how has the COVID-19 affected in your schooling, and did you cope up with it?
Thank you. I think the question came from Pranav, so thank you. And so COVID, I come from the Doon school, which is a boarding school. So here I share a very important relationship with my teachers, because they're not only my teachers, but they also fulfill the role of a parent. And I think that to me was a huge impact, that I wasn't sharing that relationship with them for this past year. But also in my school, that a large part of the learning takes place outside of the classroom. On sports fields, there were panelists talking about their experience, outside of the classroom. And I think that's where a lot of the learning takes place. And it was the same for me. which meant that COVID was a huge barrier to that learning, because now the distractions weren't only in the classroom, but also on the side of your classroom where you had your phone, or you were playing Among Us with your friends in the middle of an online class with your video off. So I think that that way online classes did have their challenges, but I did derive some benefit in that I was able to attend an MUN conference that perhaps I wouldn't have been able to, and even debates that were in different time zones, actually. One was a British debate and one was an American debate. That would, if they had happened physically, I definitely would not have been able to attend. So I think that way it had both its benefits and its disadvantages, but I definitely learned a lot. So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much for your insights, Kabir. So Kinzang, I think we lost you for a moment that time. So if you're able to connect, then can you please ask your question?
Thank you for Nindra for giving me an opportunity. I have one question. How to use the technology to create a learning space transcend physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual spheres? Is that clear?
Kinzang, perhaps repeat your question.
How can we use technology to create learning spaces, transcend physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual spheres?
So perhaps would one of the speakers who are talking about learning in the digital era or change like this?
I would like to answer that. The thing is, you can't really use technology to combine, like to keep in check all of those factors, which is almost, I don't think it's possible to do. In my opinion, like I mentioned, we should do hybrid learning, which could have the benefits of technology in use, and you can have those spiritual factors and the mental health factors, which you can improve with in-person classes, like physical classes, like 2 days a week. I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks a lot for that answer, Chris. So now we have another question, which is directed to Keshav, but anyone who would like to answer can answer, which is, why do you think digital learning is the future? Because there have been pandemics in the past, and learning has changed routes in the past. Disruptive pandemics or other crises have happened, but it has returned to normal. So don't you think that we will return to normal? Because you talked about a hybrid learning system that we will arrive at.
Thank you for your question. And I actually agree with your question that there have been pandemics in the past and learning has changed routes in the past. So we did not have technology in the past right now. Okay, the world is moving at a very fast pace and we are amidst new and new technology every single day. But a classroom gets much more out of the student. And don't you think we will return to normal? We are returning to normal right now. I'm into normal as well. But remote learning is possible due to digital learning. How can a teacher who lives approximately 2,000 miles away, if he's taking, let's say, if he's collaborating with me, shall he travel 2,000 miles? No. That's where digital learning is the future. It plays a vital role over there in remote learning. And yes, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Keshav. Thank you for that answer, sorry. And I think it's very interesting, especially considering historical context, where in past pandemics...
Kabir, I want to give the answer.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Digital learning is not the future. No technology can replace chalk and duster. We can make use of technology to make our learning easier, but human touch and human connections were and are and will, I think. We can't replace the basic things like chalks and duster. We can only use the technology to simplify. That's my view.
Okay, thank you so much, Sanvarya. And I think like to respond to both of your answers, like the Spanish flu in 1919 was a great example of a previous pandemic that not only brought about behavioral changes, but also left some of the structure intact. So it's a little bit of what both of you are saying, and in that context fits in very well. So our next question is how can hybrid learning that is sort of the vision that has been presented in this webinar be made available for children who come from less fortunate backgrounds and schools that are less that consist of less fortunate children than the panelists that we have today. And have any of the panelists today thought of how we can make sure that other children who are perhaps less privileged arrive at those equal opportunities? So if anyone would like to answer this.
Could I take that one?
Sure, go ahead.
So I feel that the most, I feel first of all, I feel this hybrid model of half the time you're at home, half the time you're in school. I don't think that will last very long. Once the fear of the pandemic is over, I think we'll all be in school. I think the more lasting impact, which I think will also help the disadvantaged sections, is this idea of online learning, online courses through platforms like Khan Academy, etc., where what you don't understand in school, or if you want to build upon that, or even if you don't get good school learning, you can always supplement it with these. And the awareness about these platforms is, I feel, the most important takeaway. And that way, yes, it is hybrid, but it is also accessible to students who are less well off, because as far as I know, a lot of these platforms are free.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a part of part of an initiative actually, which is working towards providing students from rural areas with opportunities to learn. And through our surveys and the information we've collected, we have understood that a lot of government schools have got funding and they are trying their level best to actually create opportunities for students to get to get phones or computers to attend online classes. But from our own end, I think the best we can do is lend our own resources that probably we have in excess. Probably you have an extra laptop or something from one's end. One can always help in that way, or just educating some students that that might just need it, or just supporting them. That's the best you can do at the moment.
Thank you for that answer, Chetan. And I think this also relates to Rinchan's question of the divide created by digital learning. So thank you so much for these answers. Our next question is directed to Bharami. So what, according to you, as a young learner, is the purpose of education? And what sort of ways of learning are the preferred choice of our generation to achieve the ultimate purpose of education that you believe in?
For me, the purpose of learning is to gain knowledge by studying. I mean, like by by lots of ways, by reading books, or at this time would be on the internet. I think studying is not limited to the classroom anymore. You can be more free to explore elsewhere. And I feel like the method of learning that I prefer the most would be studying through traditional classroom, because maybe I feel like being able to interact with your teacher or the person who is giving you the information is best for your ability to learn, but being able to learn on the internet is a very good skill to have as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think now more than ever, we're coming to terms with our technological skills because we're being forced to become more and more tech savvy. And I think that's a really nice thing. So thank you for this answer. And with that, we come to the end of the question and answer session. So I would now invite Nendra to come and give his takeaways from this session, as well as close the session on his behalf. And then I will come up and speak about my takeaways.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kabir. I'll just share some of my takeaways from the first and second themes of learning how to learn, and also the changing roles of us as students and family members and peers and parents as well. So it was interesting to hear from others that learning is a skill, and we have to be lifelong learners, and learning has no age. So we have to develop passion for learning and make sure that learning becomes a skill, because we have to learn throughout our lives. And we should not just rely on the theory or just the content that is taught to us in classes, but we should also go through practical experiences to make sure that we know how to apply the knowledge that we learn. And going for holistic development, making sure that we use technology instead of letting technology use us. We should use technology to enhance our own abilities and capabilities to make sure that we learn better and become better as humans. So those are some of my takeaways. So Kabir, would you like to share some of your takeaways?
Yes, thank you so much for that. That was very interesting. So I'm going to talk about my takeaways from theme 3, which I have a personal connect with, because I think learning in the digital era, as Kinley says, was a very difficult experience, and we all face multiple challenges, because the classroom environment and the human touch was missing. And I think that's something most students would have observed. But I also think that observations like Chris's and Keshav's of how we need to move to a hybrid model to fill in some of the gaps of a physical classroom are very interesting ones, in that they try and sort of fix some of the flaws in the present day education system and arrive at perhaps a new normal that isn't the same one that we were at before COVID. But I do think, even from the question answer session, that it's very interesting how we are taking ownership of our own learning, and how we're being forced to grapple with technology. And at the rate we're going, we are probably going to be a lot of jobs that we would have expected to enter might be eliminated by robots and artificial intelligence. So understandings of technology are incredibly important. And I think perhaps if there's one thing that I learned from 2020 and COVID-19, it's technological skills. And I think that way, it was 2020 definitely had its benefits and its challenges. So with that, we come to the end of this webinar, and I would like to hand over the spotlight to Choki sir to give the vote of thanks and close up this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Kabir, and thank you, Nendra, both of you, for reiterating the main takeaways in such a succinct manner. But more thank you for beautifully moderating the whole session. It was amazing. I think I'm speaking on everyone's behalf when I say that this webinar has been invigorating as well as an enriching experience for all of us. I think personally, what I got from it was the understanding the intricacies of how learning takes place in us so differently. I think all of us learn in very different ways. And what we really need to do is take ownership over our own learning. That came very strongly for me, and as well as the specific role that the roles that the teachers are taking now, that the family members are taking, and obviously the digital and the technology is taking in education. Bringing this webinar to a close, I would like to thank Mr. Arun Kapoor, our director, as well as all the team members at PLS who helped in organizing this webinar and ensuring that the entire process was seamless. I would like to thank our two moderators, obviously, and the whole panelists, all the speakers, as well as those who were asking the questions for our invaluable insights and enthusiastic participation. And finally, I would like to thank members of our audience for listening in, posing questions, and engaging in discussions, which certainly added to the depth of the topic at hand. Obviously, your participation helped in making this webinar, especially the chat section and the Q&A session, very engaging. Once again, thank you for your attendance and participation. I hope that you learned as much as we have. Thank you, everyone.